I'm Angela Morabito with the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform. Today, I have 5 big questions for Congressman Greg Murphy, who has just introduced a bill in Congress that would protect students' rights to speak freely on campus. The Campus Free Speech Restoration Act would require public colleges to drop their restrictive speech codes, and it would give the Department of Education the authority to pull federal taxpayer funding from colleges that do not uphold the First Amendment. Congressman Murphy, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Angela. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to start with your Campus Free Speech Restoration Act, because when colleges talk about things like free speech zones, codes that limit how students can express themselves, they do it in really interesting language. They talk about how they're on the side of civility. They say that they are trying to foster debate. But in practice, we know that it doesn't quite play out like that. So I'd like to hear from you. How does this bill open up the marketplace of ideas that we're supposed to be seeing on college campuses?
Well, Angela, I think what you just said is correct, what we're supposed to be seeing on college campuses. I've brought this issue up many times with many other colleges, even my own alma mater, talking about free speech. And when all you hear is one side of a view and one side of a story, that's not free speech. And when conservative views, which is what's being attacked today on campuses, when they're not invited to speak on campus, or if they are, they're shouted down or attacked, that's not free speech. You know, the University of Chicago Statements of Freedom of Expression talked about free speech on campus, trying to get colleges actually to physically commit to those ideals. Sometimes it's difficult. About 55 colleges across the nation have, but how many hundreds, if not thousands of colleges really do we have, especially in North Carolina? And so I've seen instance upon instance upon instance where free speech has been inhibited. I was on the board of trustees of a college, and I confidentially was contacted by students, even a couple of faculty members, that said they did not feel that they could be free about their views because of fear of retribution, either from professors of not grading things well. You had to write your paper to the political influence of that particular professor, or professors, if they did not teach by the line, then they would not be seen favorably for tenure or for committee assignments. All of this stuff, to be very honest with you, is nonsense. It's what's happened so much on campuses. And I know college presidents say, oh, they're all about free speech, but then, you know, actions speak louder than words. And what we've seen is very much inaction. So what our legislation does is say, well, look, you guys are getting federal money, so let's have some federal accountability. If we feel students or professors are not getting their fair share of time, or they're being treated disproportionately according to their views, then we want to know about it. Because if that's the case, it's just like in medicine, in a Medicare system where I've been, for 30 plus years. If there are problems with that, we need to know about it. So this is what we're trying to bring awareness about this issue. I think unless you've been living under a rock, you're not aware of this issue. And it's just important. The more and more awareness, the more and more that people who've just basically had enough of this nonsense are speaking out, the better.
This bill would create a lot of change on college campuses. And one of the things that I want to raise about it is it's not just public colleges, right? It's even private schools who receive Title IV funds, those federal student aid dollars paid for by you and me, the American taxpayer. So there's an element here about private schools too, that they have to be upfront about what their speech codes are, and they got to post it online. So that's a great resource for current students, of course, but is this something you think should factor in when high school juniors and seniors are thinking about where to attend college, where they want to spend their next 4 years?
Without a doubt, Angela. You know, there's an institution that gives out the FIRE rating to talk about free speeches on campus, which is easily accessible. And to go on and see where that prospective college or university stands about free speech. You know, all our students need as much information when they're trying to find the right fit for a college and university when they're moving to. The same thing goes, with transparency, and we can talk about this maybe on another time, about picking a major. Is it really the best thing to do, transparency or what? But our students need to understand what they're getting into, because remember, when they sign on that dotted line for the student loan, the college doesn't have any, they just get the money. The college does not have any skin in the game. Well, it's about time that colleges did have skin in the game. And the fact that they're going to have to say, well, we're accountable for either the lack of availability of free speech or or a good of it. I mean, a good proposal and policies with it, then all the better. You know, it's insane. It's insane that we have to have free speech zones. You know, so do you have to go into a closet somewhere and you can say something you want to? That's insane. It's just insane. It needs, and again, with colleges and universities, private ones, which I have again experience in, they receive federal funding. They receive federal funding, and if they don't want it anymore, that's their choice. But as long as they're going to get it, they need to be fair to everyone. And I've always said many times, you hear about diversity and inclusion, but in some places on college campuses, it's diversity in everything except opinion, and that needs to change.
Campus reform has seen so many examples of this, and this brings me to my next question, which is free speech is one of those issues that touches all of the others. And when you talk about big issues in education today, of course, you think of critical race theory. That fight is being fought at school boards, on college campuses all across the country. And we've seen time and again how professors who raise their hand and say, hey, I object to this. Why are you separating me from my peers? What's going on here? They get punished. The school will actually retaliate against them. Yeah. So what would this bill mean for the debate surrounding critical race theory? Does it help students on either side make their voices heard? And what does it mean for faculty too?
Well, if you look back and step back on what critical race theory done, it was pushed in, you know, many years ago. It's essentially
this issue explodes on college campuses, but the problem actually starts much earlier when you look at the data. I'm sure you've seen the nation's report card. Only 24% of American high school seniors are proficient in civics. That's less than 1 in 4. That's a pretty bleak number. So you got to realize that for so many of these kids, their first real civics lesson is when they show up to college, and all of a sudden, for the first time, they encounter an opposing viewpoint. But this starts young. We're watching things like critical race theory and social justice ideology filter from the universities where it starts down to kids as young as kindergarten. So when we look at this problem holistically, what would you say needs to be done to fix this problem?
Well, and I think the greatest problem in society today is the breakdown of the nuclear family. We don't have dinner table discussions anymore. We don't have a mother and father sitting at a table with their children discussing the issues of the day, discussing what it means to be an American, discussing hard points. And so it's oftentimes, sadly enough, a single parent home. The kids are coming, they're latchkey kids. That are coming home, and we're just not getting mother and father involved in the growth of their children. So where do they then learn their life knowledge? They learn it on the streets. They learn it perhaps on you know, in certain places in high school. They just don't learn at home. And then they show up on college campuses, which promote a particular ideology that, again, I'll go back to again, in my opinion, teaches nothing but guilt, teaches nothing but victimhood, and teaches nothing but division. It makes people have to hate themselves or feel like they should hate themselves because of the color of their skin. That's wrong at its very core. You know, of course, we have a horrible history of how this nation started with one group of people coming from Africa and being enslaved. It's horrible. There's nothing good about that.
Recent survey data is telling us that students, particularly students who are politically conservative, don't wait to be restrained by a speech code. They don't try to mess with the free speech zone. They just censor themselves, because even if the university never punishes them or retaliates, there's a really steep social cost for college students and even for faculty members, as you know, to speak out against the prevailing leftist dogma that is existing on university campuses today. So what would your advice be to a student or even a professor who is firm in their beliefs, knows what they stand for and why they believe in it, but they're hesitant to raise their hand in class? They're maybe editing their papers to please a professor's worldview instead of to advocate for their own. What message should they be hearing?
And that's a sad point, because they do this because of fear of retribution. And for those folks who say that doesn't happen on campus, that's utter nonsense. It's utter nonsense. It happens every day on campuses. I've seen it happen in high school, junior high school, the papers that get sent in for these things. It's hard. It's hard to ask a student. When I went through high school, college, I was very, very driven, wanted to get into medical school. I always had to work hard. And it's a challenge to say, all right, because, you have to get good grades to get into medical school. Is this a hill to die on? It's hard to ask that person to do that, but it's also hard to say, enough is enough. I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. There was a particular student at my alma mater, a female who was an Indian, who was attacked for being conservative. It even made in one of the big state's papers. She was attacked for being conservative on campus, and really not much was done about that. And it's sad. She stood up for her beliefs, as have many places on other campuses have done that. But it's going to take more and more individuals to stand up for these beliefs, stop the nonsense wokeism that permeates things. Angela, I think it also goes back a little bit to the point of the fact that so many of Americans have given up on faith, have given up on belief, and their new belief is wokeism, is guilt. And they have to express that somehow, have to seek forgiveness for that somehow, rather than seeking it through their creator. But it takes strength. It takes courage for professors and students to do that. And it's hard. A professor wants to achieve. He wants to have a good job. He wants to do all these things and puts himself out on the line at so many colleges and universities if he does not toe the line. And, on so many colleges and campuses, universities now, you have to sign a statement that says you're all about all these liberal goals. You had to do it at my alma mater. I saw it. Professors had to sign it. And that's basically signing a manifesto that you will ascribe to the progressive left's ideology. It's nonsense. This nonsense needs to stop. And I will tell you, Angela, I haven't always been in politics. I was a surgeon all my life, and coming in politics, you have to all of a sudden say, well, wow, am I just going to be a bystander, or am I going to draw a line in the sand and make a difference? And I've had to transition from that. Medicine, everybody tries to get along, work towards these things. Politics is adversarial, but when you firmly believe in what you believe is right, you have to be willing to fight for it, and damn the consequences. You have to be willing to stand up for what's right.
It does take bravery to speak out on a left-leaning college campus, and that's something the Leadership Institute really tries to foster in young adults. It's always a positive thing to see. Congressman Murphy, I appreciate you stopping by to share your perspective on the Campus Free Speech Restoration Act. Thank you for answering 5 big questions.